Alrighty, so hello everyone. This is attorney Robyn McCoy with Robyn Legal. I know we've been on a little bit of a break, but we're back. Spring is here, and we have our wonderful special guest, attorney Theresa Rich, who she and I are both board members on the Michigan Democratic Women's Caucus. So shout out to Aunt Virgie, Clarice, Eleanor, the whole gang. And so, Theresa, I'm excited to have you here, and one of my first spring shows. And so, so let's jump right in. So, I know you gave me your bio, and I was really excited to see that you were born in Benton Harbor, Michigan, which is where my dad was born.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, so first, thanks for having me, Robyn. You and I have known each other quite a few years for our work with the Michigan Democratic Party Women's Caucus, but we really haven't had the opportunity to talk law, to talk life, because we've just been so busy working. So thanks for the opportunity. And yes, I was born in Benton Harbor, and my family is still there. My sister has a hair salon in Benton Harbor. My brother sells boats across the street at Wolf's, and my parents still do a little bit of real estate. And what's interesting is I was telling my dad about this last night, and he said, "Oh yeah, I used to box in high school against Philip McCoy, who's probably your uncle." We figured out.
Right. Yeah.
And that he cleaned his clock. That he cleaned my dad's clock.
I know that's unfortunate for your dad. And yeah, my uncle, I have an Uncle John I know that was a boxer, and he was a minister. Actually, he passed away last spring. So he was one of the first to pass away, when everything was going on. And that was sad. He was 85 and he was dealing with some health issues. And so so I saw you were born in Benton Harbor and went to school, St. Joseph High School. And again, I'm related to half of Benton Harbor. I got relatives in St. Joe. So you probably went to school with some of my relatives. Perfect. And cousins, things like that. And then, so I was looking at your background. I mean, a very impressive background. I see you have the Rich Loft boutique firm in Farmington Hills with your husband, Brian Rich. And then, I see you're a council member in the State Bar of Michigan, Elder Law and Disability Rights Section. You've been an elected official with the Board of Education for Oakland County Intermediate School District.
Still there.
Yeah, and previously, previously on the Farmington Hills City Council, a professor of management at Wayne State, the Mike Ilitch School of Business Administration, a motivational speaker, author of the Michigan Probate Register, Staying Sane in Crazy Times, and Bretta Bunny Bounces Back. That sounds exciting.
I wrote that with my daughter.
Oh,
it's an illustrated children's book.
Okay, yeah. Well, you see, I got my little. I don't even have any kids. I have nieces and nephews, but you see, I got my little stuff. I'm a children's advocate, okay. But I got my little Winnie the Pooh and my little purple unicorn in the background. So that's for me, and when it's safe, where if kids come visit, they can come play. But So I see, you've also got some of the things. You're chair of the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, and it says education block.
For the education block. Yep.
Yeah. And former VP of the Michigan Municipal League Women's Caucus, experienced global leader with 30 years experience in strategy, human resources, diversity, executive coaching, and tax law at General Motors. Let's see some of the things here too. You went to Lake Michigan College in Benton Harbor.
Yep, started at community college. Yep.
My mom went there. She went there. She was in the military. Then she went there, and then she transferred to U of M to get her nursing degree. So shout out to Nurse Pam. I hope to get her on here. She's always got her commentary. She's a little shy about coming on. So hopefully she'll see you're on here and get more people. She'll come. And so then, I see you transferred to Grand Valley State for an undergraduate degree in accounting and an MBA, followed by law school at Wayne State with an LLM in taxation. And you got your PhD in organization and management from Capella University, and you're a 2021 fellow at the Michigan State University sponsored Michigan Political Leadership Program, and you'll be attending the state and local executives and government program at Harvard in the summer of 2022. And let's see, it says you've been with the Girl Scouts, you've been serving in the Girl Scouts of Southeastern Michigan Advisory Council, the Michigan Democratic Women's Party Caucus, which we're on together, and finding ways to address food insecurity and elder abuse. So you have a fabulous background, resume, and this is our, it's our last day of Women's History Month, so I just felt it was very apropos to have you, have you on and honor you for all that you've done. And we have young women out there who will, I'm hoping that they'll see this video, they'll be inspired, and just like with Black History Month, I mean, I'm Black every day. I'm also, we're women every day. So it's like women need to be celebrated every day. Okay, I'm just gonna say that. So yeah, so I know you do estate planning. And so can you tell the audience, like, what's the benefit of having an estate?
Sure. So everybody has an estate. I've heard some people say, "Oh, I don't need an estate plan. I don't have an estate." If you have anything, you have an estate. You have things, and more importantly, you have yourself. And so, what's really important is making sure that if something were to happen to you, that you're not able to make decisions on your own behalf, then you have somebody designated to do that in writing, witnessed, so that if the God forbid were to occur, then the things are in place that you need. And goodness knows we may be coming up to a fourth wave on COVID. By the way, everybody's wash up, wear your masks, get your shot, stay distanced, please.
I got my shot. So
yeah, I had number 2 yesterday, so very excited about that. But if you don't have somebody designated to make your decisions for you, then your medical professionals and more likely than not, your family members won't even be able to come into the hospital to help you. And if they don't have anything, if your loved ones don't have something in writing saying that they can make your decisions, then there's nobody who can make your decisions. And so I'll give you a worst case scenario that I dealt with a few years ago. There was a woman who advanced in age, and she had never done her paperwork, had dementia, so she wasn't able to make her own decisions anymore, and it was too late for her to do the paperwork. And so tip number 1, if you do have a family member who has a dementia diagnosis, more likely than not, they still have times of lucidity. They still have times, oftentimes earlier in the day than later in the day, because sometimes people get what's called sundowners. And so get the paperwork in order, because in this family, they didn't. And so this woman was in close to end of life. And the facility that she was at, because she required 24/7 care, the facility where she was at encouraged the family, go get a guardianship. And so that's something where you go to court and have to apply for that. And so they applied for the guardianship. I was brought in as something called a guardian ad litem. So anytime there's a petition for a guardian, they appoint an attorney to go out and be the eyes and ears of the court and make a recommendation to say, does this person really need a guardian? And are the people who are being recommended appropriate?
Okay. Yeah, I've done that actually. I did that a few years ago. Yeah.
Yep. And so I was a guardian ad litem for this one. And so I had arranged with the family that I was going to go to the facility. I was going to meet the family members. I was going to go see this woman. And the number one thing they did not want for this woman was that she would have to be resuscitated. Because no matter what you see about CPR on the TV, it isn't a gentle, easy thing. It's violent. And the first thing that happens is they crack your ribs. They did not want this for their mother. But they dawdled on the paperwork. So as I was pulling up into the parking lot to meet with the woman that morning, an hour before, she'd coded. And they had to put her on an ambulance and take her to the hospital, where they had to try to resuscitate because they had no ability to not. And that's how she died. And it was worst case scenario in everybody's eyes. And so if she had had paperwork that that was a medical power of attorney that would have given anybody of her loved ones, and she had a number of children, that could have made a decision on her behalf, that wouldn't have been needed.
Right. Yeah, I know with
Right.
my grandmother, she had Alzheimer's, but we did her documentation and she had to go to the hospital. They took her off, they had her on a ventilator, and then I ended up being the one staying with her, and she passed away peacefully. She just had a directive that she wanted things, just to be out of pain and just try to make it as painless as possible.
Yep. And so she had probably a do not resuscitate order.
Right.
And she probably also had an instrument called a living will, or advance directive, they sometimes call it. And that is where you say, in the event of a terminal situation, here's how I want to go. And, with COVID now, we're having a lot of interesting conversations because quite a few people who have COVID that requires them to be hospitalized need to be intubated.
Okay.
And conversations I've had with a lot of my clients pre-COVID were that is not the way they wanted to go.
Okay.
They wanted to be able to say last words to family members. And if you're intubated, you can't.
Okay.
And so, we've had more conversations about that. And so some of the documents I've been writing for people this last year have also said, I don't want, for those who do not want to be intubated, there's an exception for COVID.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Because I mean, on our firm, we do estate planning. My dad, my partner, attorney Robert McCoy, he does that. And I definitely implore people to have the will, get the durable power of attorney for health and finances, because trust if necessary, because it can be very messy with people. It's like crisis. People come to us in crisis if they don't have any of that stuff after the person's passed away, like the will, and it's just very messy. And and I did have attorney Terrence Quinn on one of my shows, and who is like yourself is an expert on estate planning. And I definitely, there's a need, and I've been talking to all my friends and family. Like I have some friends who have children, about the importance of having the will, and designating who you want to be as a guardian if you or your mate don't survive. And so can you speak to the audience on the importance of if you have children, on having a will?
Sure. Happy to do that. And actually, before that, let me talk about adult children, if I may.
Okay.
So I strongly encourage anybody who has adult children, 18 and up, to make sure that at least you have powers of attorney for them.
Okay.
Because if something happens to your child, and I'll tell you, as soon as my children turned 18, and this was before I was doing this work, as soon as my children turned 18, we made sure they had a power of attorney in place, because no matter how much I may stomp my size 10s and put my hands on my hips and say, but I'm the mother, without any paperwork, I can't help them. So that's an important thing. But yes, in estate planning, if you have minor children, people need to know if the God forbid, or as one of my colleagues says, if both of you eat the bad potato salad, if the God forbid were to happen that both of you go, what should be happening with your children? Okay, so if your children are above 18, we talked about them needing to have a power of attorney. The other thing, though, is no matter how responsible your adult child may be, for those who have worked their whole lives and have, a few dollars to rub together, do you really want your children to get everything in a lump sum?
Okay.
Or is that setting them up to wrap a really fast car around a tree and make some bad decisions? So most of my clients will set up a system so that they provide payment over time to their adult children. And then if they have adult children who have sketchy mates, there may be other provisions as well. But let's talk about when you do have the younger kids.
Okay.
So when your kids are still school aged, or actually I just did a plan for some folks, they're expecting their first any
Okay.
day, actually.
Okay.
And
Oh, that's exciting.
they had a really unfortunate family situation. The mom to be lost both her parents within 9 days last spring.
Oh, no.
Dad died of cancer, and they found mom dead on the floor 9 days later. And we
Oh,
suspect it was probably COVID, but it was so early, we don't know. So these people did not have a plan.
okay.
The daughter, however, said, listen, I know my baby's not born yet, but will be. And God willing, and something happens, here's what I want to have happen. And I want it to be raised by this person. And, to the extent we have life insurance, or we have any savings, or we have equity in our home, here's where I want the money to come from. And in a lot of situations, you'll have one person that the child would live with, or children would live with, but somebody else who's managing the money.
Okay.
So you might have one side of the family managing the money, and another side of the family having the child live with them. And then what do you want for religious beliefs? What traditions do you want to make sure that are imparted to your child? But with some families, that's really important. And so you want to make clear, in lieu of the number one scenario, which is me raising my child until I die a very old natural death in my sleep,
Okay.
then here's the way I would want them to be raised. And so here are things that are important to me. Maybe what's important to you is that you make sure that they graduate high school. Maybe what's important to you, I've had some families, what's important to them is a religious education.
Okay.
Okay. But unless it's in writing, how do you know?
Okay.
And I've had some families who've come to me and said, I couldn't do it because I couldn't come to terms in my head that I might not be the one to raise my child.
Right.
And so they just go on a hope and a prayer that nothing's ever going to happen to them, and hopefully not.
Hopefully not. And can you, because I do know, you and I are both lawyers, but our audience is not, they're not.
Right.
So let's first can you explain to the audience what is a will?
Sure. So a will says, when I die, here's what I want to have happen to my stuff. And so a will is a legal document.
Okay.
It needs to be signed and witnessed. It needs to be dated. It needs to be very clear that this is a will. And as you and I know, Robyn, there are some people who do what's called a holographic will, or a handwritten of their own, right? And those will be accepted,
Okay.
but they need to meet certain requirements. And if you don't meet the certain requirements, it's out. So the will says, here's what I want to happen to my stuff.
Okay.
Now, the will should also say, here's who I want in charge of distributing it. That person is called a personal representative, or you might hear the word executor.
Okay.
Same thing, but in Michigan, we call it a personal representative. And so that would be the person who's in charge of dealing out whatever gets dealt out afterwards. Now, what happens if you have a will is that for your things to be distributed out, assuming it's over a certain dollar amount, which is like $20,000, anything less than that is what we call a small estate, which is a lot easier to deal with, but needs to go to probate.
Okay.
Probate is court.
Okay.
And so you don't have permission to deal out whatever is left until you get authority from probate.
Okay.
And so that means you need to go to court. You don't have to have a lawyer for it. Love your Wonder Woman, by the way.
I know, Wonder Woman. Yeah, anyway. I have the cartoon and the movie. Anyway, go ahead.
Nice. So you don't you do need to go to court and file a case. And it takes at least 6 months after a person dies for that to be closed up. So,
Okay.
if typical, if there is a will, and let's say I die, my will says here's what's going to happen, then you need to publish notice to anybody that I might have owed money to.
Okay.
You need to let folks know just in general, hey, Theresa died, and so anybody who she might have owed money to, you have 4 months to come forward and say you want that money. And if not, so speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay. Yeah, I've used that when I've talked to.
Mhm.
I was raised Catholic, so
Me
Pentecostal.
too.
Yeah. Go ahead. Okay.
Yep. Me too. Me too. So that's part of the process. The person who's your personal representative is also responsible for putting together an inventory of everything you had,
Okay.
and then paying out your debts, and then distributing out anything that may be left with how you said you wanted it done. But
Okay.
that is a court process. So that's a will.
And then earlier, I know you talked about like when a parent, they may want to have it where one person is the guardian for the children and then somebody else manages the finances. So that leads me to the concept of a trust. So can you tell the audience what is a trust? And then because I've seen it where you can do a will with a trust embedded in the will, or some people do separate trust or special needs trust. So can you speak to the audience about what exactly is a trust?
Sure. So a trust is a legal entity, basically, and it is a where I will put my assets so that they don't have to be paid out immediately after death. They
Okay.
could be paid out over time. Now, the beautiful thing with the trust is if your assets are in your trust, which means that, if you have a bank account, that you go to the bank and say, I want this in the name of my trust, then that's one of your trust assets. Or you might put your house in your trust. And so the beautiful thing of a trust is you don't have to go to court.
Okay.
So nobody knows your business.
Okay.
So for instance, with Aretha Franklin,
Right.
whole world knows her business.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because everything has to be public.
Right.
Because all she had was a will. She didn't have a trust.
Right.
Now, what I do with my clients is I do a will with a trust.
Okay.
So just in case for some reason the trust fails, I write a will that we call a pour over will,
Okay.
which that the assets that you have would, through a miracle, pour into your trust as possible. And so that happens. So the trust, what's nice about the trust is it allows for payment to happen over time, and it keeps things private for you. And so it gives a little bit more control after you pass. Now, you asked about a special needs trust, and that is something totally separate. So if you have a loved one who, or it could be you, who has special needs, that they're going to require care over a lifetime, and maybe they're receiving Medicaid,
Okay.
getting some sort of state assistance. If they were to inherit a chunk of money from
Okay.
you, then that disqualifies them for their government aid, more
Okay.
likely than not. And so what a special needs trust does is it holds assets that you want to be used for that disabled loved one, so that they are receiving clothing, travel, shelter, food, and so that way the money can be used for them,
Okay.
but not disqualify them.
Okay. Yeah, I know I've had friends that, because I do educational advocacy, and I have some friends that have children with disabilities, might be Down syndrome or something to that effect. And then they've made sure to have like a special needs trust prepared to take care of their child after they pass. And so I want to circle back because I know we were talking about the power of attorney. And again, we're lawyers. Our audience, they're not always lawyers. So can you tell the audience, like, what is a durable power of attorney for health? And then what is a durable power of attorney for finances?
So I tell my clients that you think of yourself in really three ways. Yourself physically, and which includes where you live and your care, your stuff, and then all those intangible emotionals. So let me start with the intangible emotionals first. Something I've been doing increasingly is encouraging my clients to write a love letter to their family.
Okay.
Which is, you kind of think about it as when you see on the movies where it's the reading of the will. And by the way, I've only ever had one family where after the funeral I was brought in to do a pseudo reading of the will
Okay.
with the kids. So that's one of those that doesn't really happen in Hollywood. And by the way, let's also know I want to talk about a movie recently.
Okay.
Um, uh, so um, so um, that's one thing that you can do.
Okay.
I did have one client who, by the way, um, doesn't like her sister-in-law. And so she wrote a letter to the sister-in-law too. It's in the sock drawer. And
Oh,
and I'm pretty sure it's not nice. But for the most part, you want to write something that is here was what it was important to me, and I loved you and I appreciated you and I'm proud of you, that kind of thing. So that's the emotional you. But now let's talk
right.
about
That's
the
sweet.
yourself and your stuff. So
Okay.
the yourself, physically where you live, what level of care you get, medical decisions. If you're pregnant and something happens, where's the priority?
Okay.
Those things would be covered in a health power of attorney.
Okay.
Um, who has the right to see your medical information or to
Oh,
get an update about your medical information? Now, typically, I also do a separate HIPAA release
okay.
so that in my situation, for instance, I would allow my mother, my sister, my brother, my kids, my husband to have any medical information, which means if I'm in the hospital and I'm not conscious,
Right.
then they can call and say, how's Theresa doing? And they can get an answer because they have permission. Now,
Okay.
with a healthcare power of attorney, it only goes into effect if you're not able to make your own decisions.
Right.
If you are able to make your own decisions, then you still are the one in charge.
Okay.
And whoever is your healthcare power of attorney should be consulting with you to the extent that you're able to be consulted with. And I've had situations where there are people who they're no longer verbal,
Okay.
and it's basically blinking and squeezing of a hand
Okay.
to convey what they want and what they think. And you still need to make sure you're consulting,
Right.
preserve the dignity of the individual that you're making the decisions for. So that's the healthcare power of attorney. Now, financial power of attorney, that only goes into effect if you're not capable to make your own decisions. And I've had situations where, we've had to go to court sometimes to get that to happen. Or you might need to get physicians to say, yeah, no, Theresa can't make her own decisions. So it goes into effect when you're incapacitated. That's one option of how you write it.
Okay.
Or it goes into effect immediately. That's a second way to write it. So that often happens with somebody who might have a dementia diagnosis. I've
Okay.
had that recently, and so they're still very, very lucid now. They still know what they want and how they want it, but they know that they've got a tough road ahead. And so their decision is, let me put that into effect now.
Okay.
The third way is I call it springing. So it's, I write it so that it's not in effect today, but if I sign this page at the very end, which is also will need to be notarized, that
Okay.
says, okay, I am ready for Robyn to be my power of attorney, then I can sign that in the presence of a notary, and then it becomes immediate that Robyn is now my power of attorney.
Okay. All right. So, well, I want to jump into the next segment, but before I jump, is there anything else you want the audience to know about estate planning?
Yes, the
Okay.
movie Because I Care is not a documentary.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's a really well done thriller
No, I
kind of a
haven't seen
movie.
it.
Oh man. Don't go to sleep right after. But it is the story of a supposed it's Hollywoodized professional guardian, and how she works to become the guardian of preying on people.
Oh, I saw the commercial. Yes. Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
did.
And it, okay, let me just say that what happens in the movie doesn't happen in real life. There are safeguards in place. So for instance, we talked about the guardian ad litem who goes out and is eyes and ears of the court and reports back. And so, for those who have seen it and go, oh yeah, I saw that movie, I know how the system goes. That's not how the system goes. So
Right.
that was the last thing I wanted to put in.
Yeah, yeah. I worked as a guardian ad litem for a few years in Washtenaw County, and I mean, we had some issues going on with the probate court, and there were concerns about people coming in and doing petitions for conservatorships to control the money or guardianships, and abuse of power. So they definitely they make sure they do the trainings, and they have the attorneys come in as the guardian ad litems. And so I did that. I also did it with folks that might have some mental health challenges. So you have to go to the hospital early in the morning. You assess the person, and then they decide, do they want to be voluntarily committed or involuntarily committed. So that was pretty intense, because you go into the psych ward and the door is closed, and it's like I do criminal defense when I go in there and the door is closed and I go to the jail, and I'm like, okay, I'm just coming to visit, I'm not staying. So yeah.
And the sign says you can't have a pen because they're afraid it's a weapon. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Okay. So, again, in looking at your background, you are also an elected official. And I know a lot of the work that we do with the Michigan Democratic Women's Caucus is we're encouraging women to run for office. We see that a lot of women are more than qualified, have the education, have all the skills, and sometimes they're discouraged, and then you have some men that are out there that are underqualified, and they run and they're running the show. And so what can you tell any of our audience members that may be interested in running for office? Any women that are out there?
So let me step aside from the women for just a moment, because I do have a son who
Okay.
is an elected official serving on the Farmington School Board
Okay.
in his mid-20s, and I'm very proud of him, and he's highly qualified and doing a heck of a good job. So,
Okay. Shout out to
but
your son.
I got shout out to
Oh yeah, I
Zach.
know. Hey, your mama's gotta give a shout out to the son too.
Mamas, as mamas do.
Right.
But here's the thing. I didn't run. So I've been on the Board of Education for Oakland Schools, which is the intermediate school district for the county. And I have been on that board for 10 years now. But I didn't run until my husband saw something in the paper that they were looking for a new appointee to replace someone who had stepped down.
Okay.
And he said, sweetie, this would be so perfect for you.
Okay.
And up until then, it hadn't occurred to me, Robyn.
Okay.
And Mayor Marion McClellan, who's mayor of Oak Park, highly recommends a book called Hardball for Women. And it's an old book, but it's a good book. And it talks about that phenomena,
Okay.
how as women, we don't have the role models. I mean, increasingly we do now, but we have not seen ourselves at the table.
Okay.
We need to be asked. Women need to be asked. And I saw it when I worked in human resources, where a woman would look at a job posting and she would see that she has 10 out of 10 of the qualifications, but maybe not excelling at all 10.
Okay.
And she'd say, no, you know what, I shouldn't apply. Whereas, and I know this is a stereotypical sweeping generalization, and I'm gonna get people who get nasty with me about it, but the reality is that more often than not, a man will look at the same thing and say, oh, I got a couple of them. Yeah, heck yeah, I'm gonna apply.
Okay.
And so why we teach ourselves to doubt, why we allow ourselves to doubt, is just a shame. And so, for all of us who are in elected office, for all of us who are in party positions, we need to not only pull up for ourselves, but doggone it, reach down and pull another woman with us. That's why I
Right.
love the Girl Scouts, because it's not just cookie sales. Now, cookie sales is great entrepreneurship, but so many important leadership, power lessons are happening. And so, when we think about women, what do we hear about? We hear about, well, what are they wearing?
Right.
Or I don't like their hair, or I
Right.
do or don't like that lipstick. And we don't have that same um, lens.
Or level of scrutiny.
Scrutiny.
Yeah.
Scrutiny, exactly. We don't have that same scrutiny happening to everyone,
Right.
right? And so
Oh, and I would be remiss if you were talking about the Girl Scouts. So I was a Girl Scout, and my little niece Imani is a Girl Scout and has been doing the cookie sale. So shout out to Imani. But
good
yeah,
job,
I think,
Imani.
yeah.
Yeah, and do you know that all the women who've gone to space were Girl Scouts?
Oh, I did not know that. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it is so important that we develop our bench. When I was in corporate life, I didn't see people running for office.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, after I was elected to the Farmington Hills City Council, I noticed, now wait a minute, we have Representative Dingle, we have, and these are GM women,
Okay.
Gwen Markham, who
Okay.
was at the time a Novi City Council member and is now on the Oakland County Commission. We had Edna Abraham, who is still with General Motors. She's on the Troy City Council. We had another woman who's on the Troy City Council. We had a woman who's on the Novi City Council, and we have the now mayor of Allen Park. And we had Veronica Mitchell, who was Auburn Hills.
Okay.
And so we created a little GM Women's Caucus of elected officials. Got together a couple of times for dinner when some of us were first elected. And, just to give support and to look into organizations to say, who else is out there? Because here's the thing is that so many of us will think, well, I'm working and maybe I'm raising a kid or two. And so elected office really isn't the right thing for me. My employer might not support it. And so my challenge is start somewhere. Start somewhere. Start with a border commission.
Okay.
Look at what's in your city. In just last week, I was working with one of my classmates, my fellow mates in the Michigan Political Leadership Program,
Okay.
And we were looking at what might be a good board or commission appointment for her.
Okay.
And, I pulled up the list from Farmington Hills, and there were 24 possibilities that she could have applied for.
Okay.
And so start there. Get your feet wet in your community and get your name out, start meeting people. One day we are going to meet in person again.
Right.
And so, go to the events and listen to what's important. And so if what's important to you is voting rights, in some cities there are committees for voter participation. That was my first commission for Farmington Hills.
Okay.
Get involved if you have a neighborhood association, get involved with that. If you're involved with the school district, if you have kids in school, get involved with the PTA. Get involved and start seeing how organizations run, because it is only by building up experiences like that that we'll have more confidence.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I know, like, obviously being around my Aunt Virgie, that we've really worked to help people, to encourage women to run for office. I mean, in my firm with my father, we folks will come to us that are running, maybe some people running for judgeships. They'll come and we'll see what we can do to lift them up, support them. We've supported folks that have run for prosecutor, Ellie Savitt and Karen McDonald and things like that. So yeah, I definitely agree. It's important that, for me too, I see it's progressive, getting progressive people to run for office, because it's like, you look at the news, you see when folks that are not progressive are running the show, like how things can get really messy. So it's like it's like, I talk to folks like I'm the vice president for Black women lawyers in Michigan, and I talk to folks within our membership, like, hey folks, we want to see what is it you want to do and how do we help you to get there. We just had a program with, I'd mentioned it, with the congresswomen and the state reps,
That
because
was so powerful.
Yeah, and I also feel like we should have more lawyers running for state rep and state senate, because some of the laws are passed and some of the laws are messy, and because some of that is because they're not always drafted by lawyers.
Yeah, I don't think we have any lawyers in the state senate right now.
Right. Oh yeah, I know for the state rep, I know David LeGrand, I know Tanisha Yancey, state rep. Yeah. So
Yeah, and Wozniak, Doug Wozniak, because he does estate planning.
Oh, okay. Yes. And so I also want to talk with you about your thoughts on some of the things that I've seen, as far as just the kind of state of play in Michigan with the governor, and the kind of the way she's, just things that have happened, the way she's, to me, it's just crazy to think that there were people that were out there to try to kidnap her. And now we're seeing, there's this whole issue about, people really wanted to just reopen Michigan, and we're starting to see some of the numbers are spiking. And then she, around this time last year, she closed it down. And I mean, I'm grateful that she did, and took the measures that she did, because I think there are a lot of lives that have been saved. But it's like, we have this tension going on in Michigan and across the nation between people who want to wear masks and socially distance, or choose to, and then people who don't, and they don't get vaccinated. And they said that in some of those spaces that it's the COVID is spreading, but then not just in those spaces, it's spreading across the state. So can you speak to just your perception about the treatment of the governor, of Dana Nessel, the attorney general, and our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson?
Right. It is infuriating that the language used about them, that the statements made about them are so incredibly sexist and all about taking power over women.
Right.
It's sickening. It is just sickening. that it seems to be okay for people to say, well, I'm just going to terrorize this person's family, as happened with our Secretary of State and people coming to her home.
Right.
Um, I the words that have been used to describe our Attorney General, the death threats against elected officials, the needing for elected officials to have escorts to and from their place of work,
Right.
being in fear at your place of work, that's just wrong.
Right.
It's just wrong. How can you do your best self, bring your best self to your role if all of that's going on? And
Right.
how is it possibly okay to talk about needing to soften up, burn at the stake? How is that okay? I just don't see it, Robyn. And so my concern is long-term impact. Is the long-term impact going to be that we women are declaring, you know what, I've had enough of all of this, and I'm going to run anyway, despite you?
Right.
And there will be some of us who do that.
Right.
But my other concern is, what about the women who go, you know what, I'm raising a family. I need to know that my kids are going to have a mother at the end of the day, and
Right.
not be at risk of some yo-yo coming to prove their power.
Right. And
And
to
so,
me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
and I was just going to complete it with, and so decide, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out.
Right.
And the who's at loss is our state, our
Right.
communities. That's who loses.
And it's it's intense because as I don't know if you've watched any of the George Floyd situation, the Derek Chauvin trial.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's the Derek Chauvin trial. It is not the George Floyd trial.
Yeah, it's and so and as I think about that whole scenario, I'm like, the world is watching America. And it's the same thing with the way women are treated and some of the issues with the governor and with our elected female officials here in Michigan and across the nation. Like, the world is watching America, and America is always espousing to certain things, ideals, as far as the treatment of girls and women. But then the way the misogyny that I have seen exhibited, and it's not even just the world. There are little girls that are watching this. And it's so children that are watching the behavior of adults in America, and it is saddening to me to see that. But I agree. I think it is encouraging when you see folks that are like, decide to run. We did a program for Black women lawyers, and where we had Congresswoman Dingell, we had Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, and Rashida Tlaib, Haley Stevens, and we had the state reps, Kyra Bolden, we had Sarah Anthony, and let's see, I'm trying to think of who, have I missed someone? There might have been somebody that I'm missing, which I will come back.
That was a really powerful session. I sat in for some of that one.
Yeah, and so it's just kudos to the women that are out there that are doing that, despite all of the craziness that's going on. And I think it's like you said, we need to get more women out there, instead of sitting on the sidelines, to try to help just we're in 2021, and we're supposed to be modern, but it's not as modern as it should be. I mean, we've had other countries that have had women presidents, but we haven't. I mean, we have Kamala. That's a start.
That's progress. And we have a woman Speaker of the House. That's progress. and in our state, we have women in leadership, and that's progress. But my gosh, the punishment that they're taking for having the audacity to serve, that's concerning. And so, um, we need to make sure that we're protecting, we're encouraging, we're supporting, we're asking, we're writing checks. That one of the things that puts women off from running is it's expensive.
Okay.
I ran for state rep back in 2014,
Okay.
and got my clock cleaned in the primary. Note to self: do not run against the PTA president.
Okay.
And so I lost to Christine Gregg, who became the minority leader in the Michigan House
Okay.
over her term in service, and did a great job. But my primary was $53,000.
Okay.
And so it is hard for a woman to ask. I mean, I can speak for myself. It's hard to ask for money.
Okay.
And so when we see a woman who's running, and if she is someone who is in a position that that her views align well with yours, and understand, you're not going to align with everything everybody says.
Okay.
Oh, sometimes you don't even align with your. I mean, I know, speaking for me, I don't always align with what I have to say from one day to the next. It's like, yeah, maybe my thinking's evolving, right? And so if you see a woman who's running, write her a check.
Right.
What would you spend on a pair of shoes? What would you spend on a nice dinner out or a nice evening out? Write her a check. Offer to introduce her to people you know.
Right.
And see what you can do to support. It's not just that I am with you, girl, let's go. Yeah, we need to make it tangible.
Right. It's action. I mean, before the pandemic, could be door knocking, volunteering with the campaign. I mean, now I guess it's not so much door knocking, it's virtual, doing virtual events for folks, hosting virtual parties. If you can give money, like you said, connecting people with the right connections to help lift them up, and support them. So, okay. All right. Well, I am glad that we had this opportunity. Did you have any closing remarks? I know we're lawyers. Anything else that you want the audience to know?
In summation, no, I really appreciate your including me for this end of Women's History Month. I am honored to be on your program, so thank you. You are someone I have looked up to since we met. So it's great that we get to spend a little extra time together. Just in closing, go help another woman. Go help another woman. And I went to an event not long ago, and Zoom, of course, and the people were to give 2 words about their thoughts about the pandemic. And the words I used were gratitude and grace.
Okay.
Gratitude because, yeah, it's been bad and it's been tough, but there's still just so much we can be grateful for.
Right.
And grace because here's the thing, and I know you see this with your students, I see it with mine. People are doing their level best.
Right.
And it's hard right now. And so offer grace. Offer the ability to, give them this one for free in terms of a pass. Let people know you care, and show kindness, because these are going to continue to be tough times. While many of us have our shots now, more of us don't.
Right.
And so, to the extent that you can find a way to give kindness to someone else, do it. because goodness knows we all need it. So thank you for the forum and the opportunity. And I loved my time with you, Robyn.
Yes, thank you, Theresa. So everybody, this is Attorney Theresa Rich. I'll make sure to put her contact information in our the YouTube link, the Facebook link, and the website, the Robyn Legal. And so yeah, so thank you. This is a wonderful way to end Women's History Month. Although, just like I said for Black History Month, I'm Black every day. You and I are women every day. So
Every day.
we're women every day. Thank goodness. So yeah, so thank you. And I'm sure I'll see you. I'm sure we'll be doing some kind of, my aunt will have us, and Clarice and Eleanor, some other political function where we're helping to support a woman. So
yeah, your aunt is a force of nature in and of herself.
Yes, she is, for sure. So okay, well, you have a blessed day, blessed evening, and I will talk to you later.
You be well.
Okay, you too.